Self-driving car company Waymo said it was suspending service after at least 5 of its cars were vandalized and set on fire.
Took 5 of them before you were like, should we stop sending the Waymos?
Hello and welcome to episode 265 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, my state-of-the-art air quality monitor has arrived, and I am now sharing my data with the world. Now, I'm told that makes me a citizen scientist, or more succinctly, a scientist.
James, I must now reveal that I am also a scientist, and this whole podcast has been a scientific experiment designed to drive you insane.
It will be published and peer-reviewed because it is working fine. Author of Fire Weather, John Vaillant, writes an op-ed in a major Canadian newspaper pointing out that some of our forest fires have not only burned through the winter, they've burned through 2 winters. This fact has given me heartburn that is sure to burn through the next 3 winters.
The UK is betting big on nuclear power. Luxury car maker Rolls-Royce has won the contract to produce small modular nuclear reactors. This is great news because we know these SMRs will include massage seats and beverage chillers.
All that, and seriously, a lot more on this edition of the Clean Energy Show.
All right, so we got a lot of clean air news today, so I'm going to start with my own clean air report here in my house. That is, we're doing some painting. So I'm here in the basement in my fallout shelter, and we're doing some painting just in the room next door here in the basement. Now, this worked great yesterday. I got this nice system where I have a window fan, those small window fans, and they fit nicely in our basement windows. So the idea being that leave another basement window open and then put this window fan in the room that's being painted. You turn that on, you blast all the air outside the house, so the smelly paint smell gets blasted right out of the house. And we tend to use low VOC paint, like paint smells in different degrees, and VOCs are volatile organic compounds. And so, we like to get a low VOC paint because it smells less. It's less likely to give you kind of headaches or anything. So this worked great yesterday, blasting this air out of the house. But now today we're back to our smoke warnings. So there isn't technically fresh air outside.
It's bad air.
If we put this same system into place, blowing out the air, we're just going to be sucking in forest fire air.
Oh, no. That's a pickle.
It's a pickle. I don't know what to do.
I understand. I've been in similar situations here, and I don't like it. My son is in the west coast of Canada, near Vancouver in the city of Surrey, and they are experiencing a heat wave, and the boy is freaking out.
Yeah.
He lives in a freshly made condo building where someone bought the condo with the intention of making revenue off of it. So they put in kind of cheap cabinets that you would in a rental property.
Yeah.
Not the normal cabinets you would have if you're owning it as a condo, then it cost $1 million or whatever the hell it costs. But there's no air conditioning because this is something we talked about before. There's no air conditioning in a large part of the Northeast, North America, because it doesn't get that warm. But things are changing, and he was saying, he phoned and said, how did you put up with this? This is horrible without air conditioning. And, we had air conditioning, central air, about 1978, 9, 80, something like that, probably around 1980 or so. And we went outside and socialized with people in the warm evenings where you couldn't sleep. And my mother was famous for baking things. She said, the house is cooled down, so I'll bake something at 11. So that helped my waistline and longevity. So he was searching for an air conditioner, and I was telling that, maybe you can't even install one because there's regulations in some buildings. You have to check your regulations to see if you can put a window air conditioner on because they could, disrupt the look of the building or drip out and cause streaks or something like that from the condensation that is expelled from the cooling mechanism. So he ended up buying a fan because I told him in my old apartment where I lived for 10 years after I left home, I had this giant window fan on one window, which fit perfectly. It just happened to fit perfectly on a sliding window casement that went up. And then I had another one. So one sucked, one blew, and it was a great system because it got fairly cool at night here.
Yeah. Big box, not even window fans. Those are big box fans.
Yeah, exactly. And those moved a lot of air through. So, Brian, we have a huge surprise. If you haven't heard from the Patreon podcast that we released a few days ago, we've got a big announcement. And that announcement is that I have an air quality monitor now, and it was funded by 2 of our listeners. Just 2 coughed up $250 each to make the $500 with tax available to me to buy. So I ordered it. It is the IQ Air? The IQ Air. And it shipped from Canada, in case you're interested, because it is a Swiss company that makes these, and they're fairly renowned for the quality of these things. And I believe they ship from the United States as well. Although I have read a horror story where it costs $100 to ship it back to fix it, so maybe it goes to Switzerland or something.
Yeah.
So I'm very touched by a couple of people, Glenn W. and somebody who on the e-transfer put his company, which is Weed Boutique, 5 locations in Regina for all your cannabis needs. So thank you so much. Very amazed. Yes, I cannot even believe this happened. It's so surreal.
And I'm amazed that you've already got it up and running and it's connected to this network. Like, this whole thing happened incredibly quickly.
It did, and I'm very pleased with that. It comes with 2 PM sensors that can detect PM10, PM2.5, and PM1. And it connects to a worldwide global network of, data, which you can optionally do. So it's connected by Wi-Fi in my backyard, and it's outputting this data. On my app, I can get it updated, instantly.
Yeah.
I think it does on the global network once an hour. But boy, as I was going to bed last night, things were changing. Smoke was blowing in.
Yeah.
And it was getting bad, and I was enjoying this fresh breeze, which smelled okay to me.
Yeah.
It was nice and cool and relatively fresh, but I looked at all the particles and, the warning, and it was like 5 times the WHO's standards for decent air, and the windows got closed. And I turned on the fan at high speed and had a warm, stuffy night, which I don't like in the summertime. I like to have fresh air. It's my favorite thing of summer and spring and fall, and sometimes even winter. Sometimes even winter if it's not too cold out. So thank you to you guys. And this is going to be a huge project that I'm going to talk about later in the show, why we're doing this, how it's going to work out. And it is mainly because I live near a refinery and a steel mill, kind of in a triangulated line between the two. And Brian, the teaser, I'm very disturbed by some of the things that I've learned so far. It's going to be an interesting journey, and thanks to our listeners for helping us do this. This is going to be a great project, and one that may cause me to move somewhere else. So that'll be the next fundraiser, is get James to move somewhere clean. This is horrible. This is really horrible. And the wildfires are terrible. Like the smoke here, we're getting them from northern Alberta now. We live in Saskatchewan next door, where there's a lot of fires going on, but that's blowing elsewhere, maybe Michigan or somewhere, and Toronto and places like that. But currently we're getting the smoke from northern Alberta and northern BC. And this is the same as last year. My pool is not open. I have a 18-foot round steel wall permanent installed above ground pool, which is heated by 20 feet of solar thermal rubber mat panels, which work very well, but it's not warm enough to use. And I have to clean the water and treat the water since early May or May 1st, depending on the lateness of the season. So I'm doing that at expense and not getting anything out of it. So I'm starting to wonder if the pool works in our modern climate anymore, which is tragic, because I really like being gravity free.
Yeah, I keep thinking every summer can't be this bad, but, so far, and it has come and gone. It hasn't been every single day, but it's been every few days. It gets smoky, and it's terrible. All right, so we've got a couple of stories here from The Guardian from the UK, some big nuclear announcements. The biggest nuclear program in a generation will get Britain off the fossil fuel roller coaster, says the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, announcing $14.2 billion to build a new nuclear power station and a drive to build small modular nuclear reactors. So this new announcement is Sizewell C on the Suffolk coast. It's long been expected. They think it's going to create 10,000 jobs to build this thing and eventually power 6 million homes. So this is a very, very serious nuclear power plant. Now, you may have heard of the Hinkley Point C power plant, which has been long controversial in the UK, It was supposed to have been completed by roughly now, I think, but they're looking now at, 2029, 2030 for the Hinkley Point C to open. And of course, it's gone wildly over budget. So hopefully these budget predictions for this new one at Sizewell C are perhaps a bit more realistic now that they know what's happening with that other plant. So Miliband goes on, I'm doing this because of my belief that climate change is the biggest long-term threat facing us. The truth is that we have this massive challenge to get off fossil fuels. That is driving the central ambition of the government's clean energy superpower mission. We know that we're going to see electricity demand at least double by 2050. A lot of people think it's going to be more than that. All of the expert advice says nuclear has a really important role to play in the energy system. In any sensible reckoning, this is essential to get our clean power and net zero ambitions. So this site, the Sizewell C site, was actually identified about 15 years ago, but it's taken this long to now finally secure the funding and get it going. And then sort of alongside this announcement, Rolls-Royce was announced as the winner of the small modular nuclear reactor competition that the UK government was looking for one person to build these. Rolls-Royce, of course, they make also things like jet engines, so they're not just the luxury car maker. So they've won the contract now to work on small modular nuclear reactors, which of course are still also many, many years away. So yeah, interesting developments in the UK. It's going to be 3.2 gigawatts, this new Sizewell C, and then these SMRs are going to be about 470 megawatts each. So the SMRs quite small.
Yeah, and I don't quite understand that because you have to make a lot of them for them to become cheap if you want to have it per unit of electricity over their lifetime. So why not build a full nuclear reactor or add reactors to current sites or something like that if you do need this much power?
Yeah, that's definitely a question. And since the SMR technology isn't quite ready, it doesn't seem like it's going to be any faster than building the giant nuclear plants. So it all remains to be seen, but a pretty big commitment for nuclear from the UK.
I'm hoping that if they're going to do this, that they, because this is a resurgence of nuclear that has sort of went dead since basically 3 Mile Island and the aftermath of that, and then Chernobyl, but there's been a huge worldwide slowdown, especially in the Western world, and they need to make a lot of them. They have to be the same to get that expertise back up and running again. This is the challenge. They should have started, earlier than they did. It'd be nice if they did. If they started in the 90s or something, and they would have that expertise in place and the learning curves and all that, and they need to use the same sort of technology over and over and over again. China's doing fairly well with it, but they're using their own reactor technology, and they're using the same one, and they're getting the experience, and things are speeding up and getting a little bit cheaper, but it's still questionable. And now on to my air quality, this Clean Energy Show Air Quality Monitor Project. I just made that title up, but it's there.
Yeah.
If you want to see pictures of the unboxing and pictures of the mounted display, go to our Patreon page. You'll have to have an account because I'm scared about making some of this stuff completely public because everybody's talking about people are going to sue me.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to speak the truth. Your advice on the Patreon podcast was let the data speak for itself.
Yeah, there's no need for anything else. You have the monitor, it's going to have the numbers, and that's all you need to do.
The air purifier that I've talked about that I have, it is the Coway Air Mega 200M. And that I got on a pretty good deal for $200. They were as much as $400 Canadian.
Yeah, and this is to clean the air inside your house.
It's to purify the air inside the house. I need new filters for it, but I just realized that the smell filter is also the VOC filter. So I need to make sure that's updated more often. So I'm looking on Temu to see if the reviews are good for those filters and places like that to get the replacement ones brought in. There is one that will last, the basic air filter, which is like a HEPA filter. It will last 2 years if you vacuum it. According to the New York Times, they said, this is their favorite product most of the time. And they said it will last 2 years if you vacuum it as indicated. Although I think it's only meant to last a year, but it still works well. So it has been almost 2 years now, so it's time for me to update those filters. But it has, Brian, one of the reasons this thing is expensive is because it has an air quality monitor on it of sorts.
Right.
It can detect particles down to PM 2.5. The one outdoors goes down to PM 1, and that's the very fine particulate that really gets into your blood and they're still studying it. According, the scientists still don't know what PM1 does to you, but they do know it gets into your bloodstream. The problem is when I have it by my open window in the bedroom, I don't smell anything, but it goes off. And then I look and I see the wind is shifted. And by the way, last night was crazy for wind shifting. Every hour was a different wind direction, completely different. I don't know why, if a low pressure center is passing through, but it was really weird. And it wasn't just light and variable. It was strong winds from completely different directions every hour. So yeah, I was looking at the monitors, and when I don't smell anything, I think it's fine. Like last night, I went to bed and I didn't smell anything, but I checked my app and it was like getting bad. And I could see other people, the hourly reports weren't bad yet, but they would be later. But because I had it in real time, I could tell this is what wildfire smoke is, because it comes in wafts, right? Yeah. And also, a wind direction change from industry around me will affect it as well. So yeah, that's a problem. So when it does go off, I look and I'll see, the wind is from the refinery now, so I have to close my window. So I wonder what's in that air that I don't smell. I know when I smell things from industrial processes that it's bad. If I smell it, it's probably definitely not good for me. And sometimes it smells like sweet kind of aroma, and that can be almost seductive, like, oh, this can't be that bad. But it is actually very terrible because it's like hydrogen gas or something like that. They write in and tell me if I'm wrong, because I can't, I may be remembering that wrong. And then other times it smells like, a paint thinner, like a very chemically bad stuff. Yeah. And it's rare that it smells like that, but it does smell like that. And you have to wonder, are they releasing something? What's going on with that? Why is it different? So yeah, this is, there are other air quality monitors in our city of Regina, Saskatchewan here. And I wanted to point out some interesting facts here, because CTV, the local private broadcaster, has a station just on the edge of the city, on the eastern edge of the city. They have a monitor, and it is more or less downwind from the refinery when it is a northwest wind. Yeah. And I noticed a deviation in that all the time, that it was higher, much higher than everyone else when the wind was from the northwest. And that's something that I'm going to study long term to see if there's an actual correlation there, because there's not much in between that would cause that. There's not a major highway. It's near a highway, but it's on the highway's on the downwind side of it, so that wouldn't affect it. And it is 6.5 kilometers from the refinery. Now, if you draw almost a straight line beyond that, that's where I am, and I'm 2 kilometers or 1.25 miles from the refinery smokestacks. The book that I participated in said I was 1.5 kilometers or something like that, but that's just to the edge of the refinery, not to the actual smokestacks where the emissions are probably coming from. And this is really interesting because there's only a handful of monitors in Regina. One's near you. I think it's within a couple of blocks of you down by the university there. So, I'll be interesting to see if any refinery, it's rare that the wind would blow in that direction, but it'd be interesting to see if any deviations come with a northeast wind, which is rare, but it's something I'll look for. There's one downtown, but there's one in Northwest Regina. This weather geek in Northwest Regina for over almost 25 years has had like thousands of dollars of weather equipment in his yard, including expensive air quality monitors. And I guess there's literally thousands of people who go to him for the weather. Okay. He's backing onto an artificial lake, and he's got a rain gauge, which is kind of interesting because, the airport's on the opposite side of town, like very far away from me, as far away as you can get in our city. And their rain is different than mine sometimes. And sometimes I'm curious about snow accumulation and rain accumulation and things like that. He's very scientific. He notes the problems with wind and trees and things that may affect it, and sort of mentions all those caveats. But he has an air quality monitor. Now, if you drew a line to me from the refinery smokestacks and kept going, you would hit him almost perfectly. Yeah. So if I get a deviation from the rest of the city because the wind is from a certain direction, I will be able to see how his readings go up, how they compare to mine, if they go up. And it'll be a very interesting study on what's going on with that sort of pollution. Now, if you go in a different direction than the refinery, if you go northwest from me, the steel mill is about 2.5 kilometers away. It's an electric arc steel mill furnace. It has the recycle like train cars and stuff, turn it into oil pipelines. And it's not one of those coal blast furnaces for, that creates a lot of pollution. But it still occasionally smells. And I noticed they almost look like they're trying to reduce their pollution somehow because they have big hoses that come down and go in through buildings. There must be some sort of scrubbing taking place going on there, but I don't really understand what's going on. So that's another thing. The prevailing winds are northwest in Regina, which is good for me. Bad for CTV because they're going to get most of the time. But there's not a lot of population. There is one little neighborhood in there, a corner of a neighborhood that would be in the path of those emissions. I worry about them because it's relatively new. It's a more newer neighborhood than me, and the houses are bigger and nicer and things like that. But yeah, that's interesting. So I'm going to be checking about all this stuff for not only our listeners, but for the world at large, what's going on, because the refinery, according to the book I participated in, is, they've sealed their records. Like the environment department of the province knows, but everyone else doesn't know because they've managed, their lawyers are so good, they've managed to have it sealed from journalists, from everyone else. So we don't know what's going on, and that pisses me off. I was going to name my air quality station Air in Brockovich, Air 'N Brockovich.
That's funny.
So that's what we're doing, thanks to our listeners. So here's the problem, though. It only lasts 5 years and it requires a $150 sensor replacement. And there's 2 sensors in there. There's duplicate PM sensors in there for some reason. And I'm curious because they're modular, they just slide out. I could take one out and see if it's still accurate. They're there for redundancy, for accuracy, but I wondered if it's still accurate enough. I will leave them in there for sure for the first year to make sure I have the most accurate readings when I'm doing all this sleuthing, and we'll see how that works in the long term. But you can buy a CO2 sensor, and if anyone out there knows a reason why I should buy a CO2 sensor for it, because there's extra slots, let me know, because they're very expensive. They're $250 Canadian to add that, and I'm not sure if it's important or if it relates to pollution.
Yeah, if anyone has an idea, let us know. But yeah, so our Patreon page has a great story about this with James's pictures, but also you can just go to the IQ Air website and you can look and see on the map there. Like you said, there's 5 in our city, and now one of them is called the Clean Energy Show.
Yes, you'll be able to see, you can follow it and see what's going on, especially if you live in our region here. You might be interested, or if you're interested in studying pollution and things like that. I'm thinking about the next bad stink day here in the neighborhood of contacting the local schools and just sending an email and saying, hey, there's an air quality monitor within 100 meters, 200 meters of your school in some cases, because there's 2 schools very nearby. And just saying, A, you can monitor it yourself and maybe keep the kids indoors. And B, maybe it may come up in a science class and you might want to have the teacher talk about it if it's pertinent to wildfire smoke or something you're talking about.
Yeah.
You can say, hey, we've got a monitor right nearby. We know what's going on. We can look at it pretty much in real time. So here's a reminder, Brian, why I'm doing this. This here will be a recording of an AI child reading an excerpt from Dr. Trish Elliott's chapter on the refinery called Ungovernable, from the book Unjust Transition, The Future for Fossil Fuel Workers from Fernwood Publishing. This is the book I participated in as a person who deals with the refinery emissions. It is an excellent book. It is excellent research, but some bad things come out of the refinery. Let's have a child tell us about it.
The CRC is a top-level emitter generally, particularly in the category of volatile organic compounds. They are one of the most prevalent factors in outdoor air pollutant-related cancers, representing between 35 and 55% of all cases. The CRC led Canadian VOC's refinery emissions every year from 2011 to 2021. Refinery-produced VOCs contain a roster of particularly hazardous substances. N-hexane, for example, can induce throat irritation and neurological symptoms such as headaches and vertigo at acute levels, while long-term chronic exposure has been related to damage to peripheral nerves in humans, causing weakness and numbness in the limbs, as well as reproductive damage in mice. In 2021, the CRC alone was responsible for half of Canada's total N-hexane refinery emissions, at a staggering 203 tons. The co-op also led the pack in total overall emissions of toluene, releasing 58 tons of the neurotoxin, and emitted 11 tons of benzene, a VOC that can lead to leukemia in humans subjected to long-term airborne exposure.
Time to get to the mailbag.
Yeah, and it looks like this time we have a voicemail from the mailbag from SpeakPipe.
Hello, Brian and James. Second-time caller, long-time listener. My name is Sam. I live near Aspen, Colorado. And a couple weeks ago, you guys mentioned portable solar and battery storage really taking off in America, especially with this one company called EcoFlow. I'm not a sponsor, but we use their product in probably the most interesting use case and fun to share on the show. We are an e-bike rental and delivery company. We started in 2020 and have been growing since, so now we need to charge 20, 30, sometimes 40 or 50 batteries overnight. We slowly started to buy battery storage through EcoFlow and their portable solar panels. Now we have a total of 4 solar panels and 6 EcoFlow Delta Pros. It's their biggest kind. It's almost like 2 Tesla Powerwalls. The panels charge our batteries at night or during the day, and then we plug the EcoFlow batteries into our e-bike batteries overnight, and those get charged, and we start to cycle again the next morning. And it's been working now for going on our 4th year, and it is awesome. We love it, and we always talk about the millions of other use cases this technology can provide. Either way, have a great weekend.
We do, don't we?
We
You guys
do.
rock.
Thank you, Sam. That was a great feedback from you, because the EcoFlow, different use case scenarios, e-bike delivery service, e-bike rental and delivery. So they're delivering the e-bikes and they can charge them up.
But of course, yeah, tons of use cases for these kinds of things. My brother has 2 or 3 of these kind of batteries because there's sort of frequent power outages at his house. So if it does go down, they can keep like a few things powered, like the fridge.
So he lives in a rural setting, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm imagining, we're hearing from somebody from northern Saskatchewan last week that had outages due to winter storms and wildfires. So yeah, I imagine they're longer in rural. The more remote you are, the more longer the power outages are, because there's a smaller number of people that are affected and a larger terrain to cover for the lines people.
Yeah, just like at our cottage, the power outages are way more frequent and they tend to last a little bit longer. Less of a problem in the cities, but a lot of people could absolutely use some battery backup like this. And then, the solution to charge e-bikes, that's not so different from, we've heard about car charging stations that have a bank of batteries as well, because you can't always get enough power from the grid. So what do? You add a battery bank and you charge that up overnight or when it's not being used. And then you overall have way more throughput if you're relying on the grid and the battery.
Well, we'd love to hear from our listeners. Like Sam, you can leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com. That's an online webpage where you just hit record and you can try again if you don't like it the first time. You're not committed to it, and we love to hear your voice on the show. And if not, you can drop us an email like most people do, cleanenergyshow, all one word, at gmail.com, and join the conversation on our Patreon page, where not all the posts are behind a firewall. Some of them you can see. They're copies of our social media posts. So join us.
All right, now a story from South Korea. This is from Clean Technica. Now, we don't tend to talk about Korea too much aside from Hyundai and Kia. Of course, Hyundai and Kia are advancing their electric vehicles fairly rapidly. They make some excellent electric cars. But, South Korea in general doesn't seem to come up too much. So this story really caught my eye, and it was something I hadn't really thought of. And of course, South Korea really came on as a high-tech manufacturing hub, and they're known for companies like LG and Samsung and, of course, Hyundai and Kia. But the thing I wasn't really aware of was that this has all been built really on fossil fuels. When Korea really started to come online in the 90s, they really had to amp up their energy usage. And it turns out that South Korea is one of those countries that just doesn't have fossil fuel resources. So, they've realized that they really need to go clean energy because, of course, clean energy is energy security. And you don't, have to rely on imports from other countries and volatile prices and so forth. So it turns out there was an election in Korea just a few weeks ago. The Democratic Party of Korea is the new ruling party. This is a left-leaning liberal type party, and they have decisively recommitted to renewable energy expansion. They want to sustain nuclear generation at current levels, and they want to accelerate coal phase-outs, a trajectory that signals a clear recognition of renewable energy's essential role in the national economic strategy. This policy reset arrives as South Korea, historically reliant on imported fossil fuels for over 90% of its energy needs, seeks urgently to mitigate both geopolitical risks and environmental pressures that are inherent in its heavy fossil fuel dependency. So this is good news. I think it's worth pointing out that they're going to maintain their nuclear at current levels. They're not planning to build new nuclear. They seem to have an understanding that this is a very expensive proposition to build more nuclear, but their plan is to keep their current nuclear at its current rate and then expand the clean energy stuff around that.
Energy independence is a big thing now, and I think the story hasn't been written yet, but I think Trump and his tariffs, just like Putin's invasion of Ukraine and Europe trying to get off fossil fuels from dependency of Russia and building their own clean energy infrastructure, I think there's a tendency to not trust outside parties anymore.
Yeah.
And you want to become independent when it comes to energy. And I think China's doing that and other countries as well. So that's an interesting just benefit maybe of these. Sometimes when bad things happen, there's a good spinoff, and we see that all the time. So yeah, well, it's probably not what they are intending for, but yeah, other countries will move to independent because, that's how you can do it.
Yeah, the less stable the world, the more likely people are to work towards energy independence. And the best kind of energy independence is clean energy independence.
Exactly. And my air purifier is going off now, so that's not good. All right, Brian, let's talk about the wildfires in Canada because they are affecting your life, my life, even Americans' lives in Northeast North America and perhaps even Northwest, depending on the winds. So it's a problem, and it is a frightening one. So what are we going to do about it? I don't know. There's not much we can do about it. The world has to decarbonize, and it's still going to be as bad as it is for some time. And it's, even if we decarbonize now, it would still, slowly get better. But John Vaillant is the author of Fire Weather. This is a book we've talked about on the show before extensively, especially after the Los Angeles fires in January. He wrote an op-ed in the Toronto Star, one of Canada's major newspapers. He says that holdover fires, also known as zombie fires, are fires that smolder underground during the winter. You think they're out because winter comes, the snow comes, it gets really cold, but these fires burn in the peat and other materials under the surface of the ground, and then when it dries up and becomes summer again, boom, you got a forest fire. So, yeah, he's seeing these things burn underground, smolder for months during the winter, and resurface again in the spring. But this year, Mike Flanagan, he writes, a research director of the Western Partnership for Wildland Fire Science at the University of Alberta, has observed something new. This is from the op-ed. This is the first time I've seen fires in Canada survive 2 winters, and I've been watching fires closely since the 1970s, he told journalist Chris Hatch. A number of these fires, quote, started in 2023, burned through the winter, and continued to grow in 2024, and then survived this winter, which is kind of frightening. I'm a scientist, he writes, John Vaillant writes, have predicted an eventual blurring of fire season into year-round burning for decades. But few imagined it would arrive so soon in our northern forests. There are knock-on effects to this relentless pressure, and one of them is evacuation fatigue, not only for the evacuees themselves, but for their hosts. High Level Alberta, that's a town in Alberta, has formally announced that it will not take in wildfire evacuees this year because they're tired of it. They don't want to do it anymore. Thousands passed through this remote hamlet of 4,000. That's not a hamlet, that's a town. At least a town. During the record-breaking 2023 season, 4,000 people showed up and saw 250,000 Canadians driven from their homes that year in wildfires nationwide. So that's a shocking stack, he writes, but not as shocking as this one. Last year, Conrad Sauve, the CEO of Red Cross Canada, told John Vaillant that when he was started working for the Red Cross in the early 2000s, not that long ago, 80% of their work was outside Canada, but now 80% of the work is inside Canada. And the reason is mostly climate-driven natural disasters like forest fires and other things, floods. Climate scientists predicted the fire season would become year-round, but few expected it so soon. Fire-related destruction is impacting insurance availability and affordability in Canada and the United States, something we've discussed, and something that's getting worse. It's almost impossible sometimes in California to get insurance these days. Climate-linked insurance crisis threatened the housing and financial sectors as well. If you can't get insurance, Brian, you can't get a mortgage. If you can't get a mortgage, you can't get a house. If you don't have a house, you're unhoused. This is how it all comes together. Fires, floods, and extreme weather are seen as repo men collecting on unsustainable CO2 debt. He has this little analogy of, debt is the CO2 we're putting in the air, and well, they're coming to collect on that debt now. We've been pouring it into the atmosphere at will for decades and decades, and now they're coming to collect. This is a quote from the op-ed. In fire-prone parts of the United States, fire insurance has become simply impossible to get and has profound impacts on our economy. Insurance, he says, makes things unmortgageable. And he thinks that this is Prime Minister Mark Carney, our new Prime Minister. He was a banker, he was the head of the Bank of England, Bank of Canada. He should be able to understand this analogy, and he's writing basically to him. And he thinks one way to view our current economic system is as a global Ponzi scheme, powered by fossil fuels and leveraged against the future of the living world. So he thinks we keep, piling emissions out into the atmosphere and think nothing's going to happen and getting rich off of it. Well, it's collapsing now. Now, if we understand industrial CO2 as a debt, then heat is the interest on that debt. And it's starting to wreak havoc on our planet. Starting around 2000, global temperatures began rising steadily and noticeably. And Vaillant urges federal action to end fossil fuel captivity before more lives and homes are lost. He writes, in light of the clear and present danger posed by fossil fuel expansion, what kind of energy superpower, which is the terminology the new Prime Minister is using, should Canada aspire to be? Conventional, that's fossil fuels, or renewable, which is clean energy? Keep in mind, he writes, the 2024 was the hottest year in recorded history, and that CO2 levels have just exceeded 430 parts per million for the first time in 3 million years. The longer Canada and other major economies remain hostage to the fossil fuel industry, the worse these fires, floods, heat waves, and droughts are going to get. The busier the Red Cross is going to be, and the more evacuations, heartbreak, and PTSD Canadians are going to suffer. This is the struggle we talk about. The theme of our show is the theme of fossil fuel power, which is unnecessary. Most of it is unnecessary and could be replaced, but they are struggling to keep that dominance and keep making that money. And politicians have to decide, is the world worth it, or is a quick buck still worth it, and we'll get out when the place crashes?
Yeah, and as we've been discussing, all of this has a toll. It has a toll on just you and me in our daily lives. But yeah, when you think about all of the fire evacuees and then the people that have to house them, sure, everyone's going to be helpful one or two times. But if this is a yearly occurrence, it absolutely makes sense that High Level Alberta might not want to keep participating. It's a huge drain on everybody who has to help.
Join our Patreon today as a paying member to get access to our exclusive Patreon episodes. We just put one out a few days ago, had a great discussion. You can listen to the first 10 minutes of any of our Patreon episodes for free. And that's when after the 10-minute mark is when we get serious and start talking about things that we can get sued for. At least I do. You can now support us for as little as $1 per month. Some of our perks are ad-free episodes, exclusive access to the Clean Energy Show Discord server, discounts at our merch store, behind-the-scenes material and private updates, thank you credits on our video podcasts and shout-outs, once a month on our audio podcast, or more regularly if you are in the Clean Club Executive. And thank you to everyone who supports our show. Even if you aren't paying, we appreciate you signing up for a Patreon account and being there to watch our updates and be part of our little community. And like I said, we have a new Supporter Lite category for $1 a month if you're interested. If that works, we'll keep it going. If not, I'll discontinue it in September. But that seems to be a couple of people who've taken part in that. And it's going well. The Patreon is going very well. We're very happy that people are coming on board for that and supporting our work. Thank you to all who support our work. We really appreciate it, especially the recent donations to our air quality monitor project, which is going to be amazing. Coming up next is the lightning round. It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy, and transportation.
Okay, at least 5 Waymo self-driving I-Pace Jaguar electric cars were set on fire amid protests that turned violent in Los Angeles on the weekend. Did you see this? The Daily Show covered it last night, I noticed, and had a lot of jokes on it.
Yeah, I've seen the headlines, but have not dug too deep.
Yeah, they said their last words were, "Tell my Roomba I love her." But apparently the protesters ordered the Waymos and then set them on fire. I don't know what the Waymos have to do. They were just looking for cars to set on fire. There wasn't enough.
Well, I guess, if you got a plan to set cars on fire, that's maybe the best way to do it. I don't know.
It'll come here by itself. No one will get hurt. It could represent as much as 5% of Waymo's fleet in Los Angeles being destroyed, which is pretty significant. After protesters set fire to 5 Waymo robot taxis in Los Angeles Sunday, the company said that beginning on Monday, they're preemptively limiting rides in areas of San Francisco where people are expected to gather to show their opposition to Trump's immigration policy. So basically, the Waymo will not go. If you're trying to get to a protest in a Waymo, it's going to be a challenge because they don't trust you anymore. I don't know what Waymo or Google has to do with immigration policies.
But this is what happens when, riots happen. But, there should be a checkbox on the app. Do you plan to light this Waymo on fire? And then if you check that box, then the car just doesn't go to you.
Canada's oil sands has reduced its emissions per barrel for the 6th straight year in 2023. Now, that's good, but they're also producing more oil, so more emissions. They like to brag about these sort of types of emissions where the per barrel emissions goes down, but then they make more oil, and the emissions are actually going up, and then people are burning that oil. And also in situ oil sands, which use wells similar to traditional oil producers, their emissions per barrel were actually rising in the oil sands. I don't know how in situ oil sands wells work, but that story is on Bloomberg. 50 million two-wheelers. This is motorcycles, mopeds, things like that. Electric two-wheelers. 50 million of them were sold in China in both 2023 and 2024. Each year had 50 million. And that's 5 times the number of all pure hybrid and fuel cell electric cars combined sold in the country. So that's a pretty significant decarbonization.
Those are remarkable numbers because we all know China has gone heavy into electric cars. They're now 50% of new car sales. But that just seems like nothing compared to 50 million two-wheelers in, each of 2 single years.
There was someone who posted, I forget where it was. It might have been China. It might have been Taiwan. But there was a streetscape downtown where everything was electric. The buses were electric.
Yeah.
The mopeds were electric. The motorcycles were electric. The cars were electric. He said it didn't stink.
Yeah.
And it was very quiet. Like, relatively speaking, it was all you heard was tires. Like everything else was quiet. And that's the kind of utopian future we're looking for here on the show. Chinese EV maker BYD, the biggest Chinese electric car maker, they sued 37 influencers in China and put another 126 on a watch list for disseminating what they say is damaging content. So I don't know what's going on there, but they're being kind of dominant about it.
We got to start our own watch list, James. I didn't know you could even do that. You could start a watch list of people.
How hard can it be? Don't screw us over or we'll put you on our watch list. and we'll watch you. The province of British Columbia, Canada, has met its 2025 oil and gas methane emissions reduction targets 2 years early in 2023. So they reached it 2 years ago. Good news story. Wind and solar met 100% of South Australia's electricity demand for the equivalent of 99 days of the year in 2024. That's like 27% of South Australia. As a province in Australia, 100% of their electricity demand equivalency was met by wind and solar alone. And people say wind and solar can't do the whole grid. Well, sometimes they can if you want them to. The first 100% electric flight, this is an airplane that is battery powered only. The first 100% electric flight landing at JFK Airport in New York cost $8 for the electricity to travel 70 nautical miles in 35 minutes. Now, if you know anything about airplane flights, if you go up in a private plane, it costs hundreds of dollars, usually, to have any sort of flight. That's $1.60 per passenger. There was 5 passengers on board this flight. Brian, I don't want to be bold, but I think even I could afford that.
That's crazy. I mean, we all know that the fuel costs are a huge part of flying. It's not cheap to put all that jet fuel into a jet, but yeah, $1.60 per passenger for the electricity. That's fantastic. Amazing.
You know, flight schools are starting to use these for the last couple of years, and I think that'll be very popular in flight schools because you'll be able to take a lesson for a lot less money.
Yes.
You know, and the lesson's only half hour anyway or something, and you have extra range for emergencies. From the IEA, electricity investments this year are set to be about 50% higher than the total amount being spent bringing oil, natural gas, and coal to market, accounting for over half of all energy investment. So you see, clean energy, more investment is in clean energy than oil. Around here in Canada, you always hear oil, oil, oil. So important to our economy. It's everything. What would we do without oil? Well, screw you. Half the world's energy expenditure money is now in clean energy, but you don't care about it some places. Hong Kong's first regular drone food delivery route launched on June 6th, Brian, flying from Science Park to Ma On Shan waterfront promenade in just around 5 minutes, which is 7 times faster than bike delivery of food. You can get orders from McDonald's, Pizza Hut, and more are flying across the little sea there on drones and dropping your food off, which is surreal.
Yeah, there's been a lot of these kind of announcements lately, and there was one about like air taxi service for the Olympics when they're going to happen in Los Angeles. There's been more of these kind of drone delivery type things. So, you know, it's all on the verge of really exploding, but still like hasn't quite happened yet, both for packages and for passengers. These kind of drone electric flights were very close to the world of flying cars.
Well, this is crossing a body of water, which may annoy people less, but can you imagine a drone crashing into your kayak with McDonald's food? And you go, thank you.
Well, you can get it delivered to your kayak, maybe.
Sure, you probably could. You might have to paddle a little bit to get to that last few feet accurate. Finally, this week in Brussels, BYD Vice President Stella Lee told the Motoring Press the company intends to build its own megawatt charging network in Europe to support the needs of its EV customers. This story is about the adoption of electrified transportation, clean transportation, and this is a big story because we discussed this because it's going on in China. We thought, well, someday it's going to come elsewhere. I'm sure they'll just work on it in China for a while. Here we are with an announcement that it's coming to Europe, and they are going to build all these megawatt chargers which supply 1,000 kilowatts or more, which is often around 3 times as much as current chargers that exist. And that means you can charge a lot faster and shorter times for doing that, and EV adoption then expands. Typically, megawatt-scale chargers are intended to recharge the batteries of electric trucks, which may have battery packs of 700 kilowatts or more, 7 times what a big car battery might have. And that is the good news because they're moving forward quickly, even though they are going after the influencers. We better not say anything bad about them.
Yeah, be careful if you're an influencer. But no, this is great news. It seems like the megawatt charger is something they're going to try and standardize on. it may be often even too much power for a lot of cars. Most cars can't take that now.
But BYD is planning to roll out these cars in Europe, which is part of the story, right? We didn't think that they would necessarily make it out to other markets, but here we are. They're planning a mass rollout of these very fast charging cars that charge at 1,000 kilowatts.
Yeah, and if you standardize at a megawatt, then trucks can use it. Semi-trucks can use it as well as cars. Like, why not just have one standard? It's a great idea. All right, well, that's it for our show this week. Again, you can contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. Around social media, we're Clean Energy Pod, and please check out patreon.com/cleanenergypod for our Patreon community. And also look for the merch store in your notes if you want to order a t-shirt or a hat or something.
Shout out to Patreon Clean Club executive members Green Bastard and Brett Rutley. And if you're watching this show on video, on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, why don't you come over to the audio app? This is where shows are meticulously edited and presented to you in the best possible form. But if you want to keep watching it on video, you could do that too, because we're recording the video and somebody's got to watch it because I'm recording it and you're recording it. So we'll see you again in 7 days. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
See you next week.